So if we haven't done, like, the ones that we haven't done, do we still need to go and do them?
No.
Okay.
Stop worrying about the mind app program exercise. If you've done them, great. If not, you'll still get 100% credit for it. If I like any of them, I'll write them up as my own homework. And if you want to argue that because you've already done some of them, you want extra credit for them, I'll buy that. So you're just going to have to tell me on that. So feel free to go in and work on them and then try to petition for extra credit. I'll give you extra credit on the midterm.
Which is on the 13th, correct?
Correct.
If you look at this, when it's understand, it's not the same.
And lastly, I won't be assigning anymore. You still want to do the quizzes, though.
Yes.
There we go.
So on 3 and 4, what do you mean by take note of which?
If you've already gotten them done, just write down which ones, and then during the exam, one of the questions will be which mind tap problems from chapters 3 and 4 have you done, and you list them, and I'll give you extra credit for them.
Because I'm like at 4.8.
Pardon me?
I'm at 4.8 right now.
Yeah, so you're going to get lots of extra credit. So it's worth trying to do them. Don't just blow them off if you don't want to, right? You'll get extra credit, but not mandatory. You're still going to get credit. Just, I'm tired of us hitting the situation where even when we write the program correctly, it doesn't count as correct. Especially since my code is identical to some of y'all's, and some people it's running and giving them 100% consistently. Alrighty, onward. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
You don't have to do them, get extra credit. If you've already done them, great, it'll help you. Just take note of which ones you have, and on the exam, one of the questions is going to be which, mind tap exercises from 3 and 4 have you done. And I'll validate that you've done them, right? And don't just say, I did them all, and not have any of them done. That wouldn't be too cool.
And the quizzes you're talking about are in mind tab?
That's correct.
It's under the apply tab.
Thank you.
Yeah, it took me a while to find it.
Okay, pardon me. How are you finding them?
It's under the apply tab.
So yeah, if I want to find one of the quizzes,
You click unit 1.
I go to like unit 3, I get out of code and I go to apply, and there it is, reviewing the basics. You'll want to do those as well. I mean, as long as it says counts towards grade, and it does. So go ahead. I mean, you can go back and retake these later. My goal is for you to get 100% on all of them. You can retake them at any time, even the last day, of the semester. But it's good practice for the exam. So go ahead and between now and the exam day, step through them. Go into Unit 1, apply, take it. Unit 2, apply, take it. Unit 3, apply, take it. Unit 4, apply, take it. They're not super long. I say. Y'all have been taking it. Do they seem super long to you, or they seem...
There are only 10 questions.
Yeah. So chapter 4. A Caesar cipher locates the coded text of a playing character and computes 2 or more encrypted characters. That doesn't sound right. And encrypts the entire message at the same time, not just from locating one position. A given distance to the left or right in the sequence of characters. That's kind of writing. That's sounding good to me. So I think I would get that, and so on. I'm not going to answer all the questions, but that's the kind of idea. And then it actually tells you which ones you've got wrong. It doesn't tell you the right answer, though, right? Yeah, but it tells you which ones you got wrong, so you can take it a second time and take it a third time, and eventually you'll get them all right. So we've been talking about strings. We've been talking about slicing to get substrings. If the name of the string is name, and you want the first two characters, then name 0:2. The first position is the first letter. The second position is one past the ending letter, but that's kind of hard to think, so I just take the difference between the two. Like starting at 2 and ending at 6, well, it's easier for me to go 6 minus 2 is it's going to be 4 in length. So start at 2 and go 4. So where's position 2? That's position 0, that's position 1, that's position 2, and going out to 4 characters is that. Then we talked about keys, data encryption. We've talked considerably about Caesar cipher several times. And then there's the block cipher, which uses a plain text character to compute 2 or more encrypted characters. That was one of the answers that was incorrect for Caesar cipher. And then each encrypted character is computed using 2 or more plain text characters using an invertible matrix. And then they just load off from there. The positional system for representing numbers. Decimal is based on powers of, you know what, I want to go back to that quiz. Starting on quiz 1, I was pretty happy with that answer. I'm going to keep going. Quiz 2. The binary number 111 represents what decimal integer? Do y'all remember how to convert binary to decimal? These are powers of 2. 1, 2, 4, and then if there were any more, 8, 16, 32, 64. But that's a 1 plus a 2 plus a 4. And 1 plus 2 plus 4 is 7. There's no pad. So if you have this number in binary, 10101, and you want to convert that to decimal, there's a 1 in there, but there's no 2's, but there's a 4 in there, but there's no 8's, but there's a 16 in there, and what if there was 2 more 1's? There's a 32 in there, there's a 64 in there, and what if the last one was a 0? Nothing else to add. And then we would just add all that up, and that would give us the answer. So when it's 111, it's a 1 plus a 2 plus a 4, which is a 7. Don't do that. So if the variable data refers to the string no way, the expression data 1 evaluates to what? So position 1 of that string is equal to what? That's position 0.
Oh, 0. Oh,
Yep, you start counting at 0, so 1 is the lowercase o. Which one of these represents 8? Well, it's certainly not that. That's 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus, and so on. This is a 1 plus a 2 plus a 4 plus an 8. That's looking real good because that's a, there's no 1's, there's no 2's, but there's a 4. Here there's a 1 and a 2 and a 4, which add up to 7. By the way, this adds up to 255 if I'm eyeballing it correctly. There's no 1's, there's no 2's, there's no 4's, but there is an 8. So to me, that represents an 8. Hope that's making sense. I'm hoping that you could do this if I asked you to do it. The variable data represents no way. What is the length of that string? And the exclamation mark counts. For some reason, when I put in a string like that in an exam and I put like an exclamation point and I ask for the length of it, sometimes people subtract 1. Or maybe they're just doing that, well, if it's a 1 and it's a 0, so if it's a length of 10, I better put 9. No, if it's 10 characters long, it really has a length of 10. So how long is that string?
That's 7, right?
Yeah, see, I almost made the same mistakes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That looks like it's 7 characters long. You know what, if you had to cheat, I mean, it's not really cheating, but what is the length of, parentheses, quote, no way, exclamation mark. I just entered that into the shell, and it's going to tell me that it's 7. Now, do I want you to rely on the shell? No. Am I going to yell at you if you do it on the exam? No. I will put a link to an online Python interpreter for those of y'all who are not going to be taking the exam in class, the online students, so that when you're taking it, at the library or whatever, you still have access to Python. because the computers at the testing center do not have idle, but you can still get to Python, right, if you just do online Python. And I'll put a link to it in the exam, just to prove to the people there that it's okay for you to launch it. And then you can enter code here if you needed to. Now, if you're entering every single question to try to get the answer, you're going to run out of time, so you wouldn't want to do that. Where were we? Alrighty, how about -1 as an index? We've talked about that before. If 0 is the first position, what is -1? It's the last position. It starts counting backwards. So -1 is that. -2 is that. -3 is that. I can prove that. I'm going to come over here to idle and do, A is equal to, Bobcat. If I do A subscript 0, that's a B. A subscript 1 is an O. But what's A subscript -1? It's the last character. It's a T. And then A subscript -2, what's that going to be? We're counting backwards now. So what?
A, right?
Yep, it's going to be that position. And -3 would be that one, -4 would be that one, and so on. So -1 should be the exclamation mark. So if we do a replace, and this is worth doing. I don't think we've talked about replace yet. I got annoyed that the PowerPoint was talking way too much about binary. I want to get back to this. Oh, it's not even in the PowerPoint, is it? So yes, there are string functions which can manipulate the string. We haven't actually done any idle programming. Maybe we want to. Let's create a file. This is Lecture M, I believe. And so I'm going to make a string. A is equal to hello darkness, my old friend. Disturbed, covering Simon and Garfunkel. Now we're going to replace. A dot replace parentheses quote dark end quote with quote light end quote in parentheses, and then let's print A. It still says darkness, but if I store the results of this, if I say A is equal to A dot replace, then I get hello lightness. So it took that substring dark and replaced it with the word light. There are two S's here. What if I do this? A equals A dot replace, and I want to take those S's and turn them into Z's. That works. No, it doesn't. Oh, I didn't print it out again. Helps if I print it out after the second time. There. So that's what replace does. We've seen several different methods by now. We've seen len, right? If you print the length of A, it'll print out, however many characters long that is. If we print out A subscript 0, we're going to get the first character. If we print out A subscript -1, we're going to get the last character. H and Z. If we start with this character and we go 4, we're going to get those 4 letters, although they've been replaced by the word light, right? So it'll be slightly different. Our result will be slightly different. Well, in that case, let's start here. I want to get that one and go 3 more. So that's position 0, 1, that's position 2. And since I want to get 3 characters, 2, 5. So I'm going to print, you would think, if I print 2, 4, 4 minus 2 is 2. That's only 2 in length, so I'm only going to get 2 in my output. You go up 2, but not including the next position. Yeah, annoying. So 2 comma 5. That gets you 3 characters. 5 minus 2 is 3. And so we're going to see LLO. No, we're not. What did I just do? Oh, that's really moronic. Yeah, A subscript 2 colon 5 to get that slice out, that substring out. There we go. Which file method is used to read the entire contents of a file in a single operation? Well, we haven't talked about files yet. So now's a good time to do so. If you did not, whatever FN is going to be file name, is equal to lecture m.py. Just put the name of your own program, and if you put any spaces in it or whatever, make it match exactly. And then we're going to do file is equal to open, parentheses, fn, comma, quote, r, end quote. That means read. Open it for read. If you put W there, it would mean open it for write, but that would erase our program. We don't want to erase our program, so we're not going to put, quote, W there. I mean, you could, but I'm not going to. Now, say you want to read the whole file in. Well, they have several different choices here. They suggest that read line. Is that going to read the entire contents of a file? No, read line would just get a single line. A for loop? You could use a for loop, but it doesn't get the entire contents in a single operation. Or just a read statement? Well, block is stupid. We're going to rule that out completely. Let's try the read statement. So text equals file.read, parentheses, in parentheses. And let's print that out. Print parentheses, quote, text equals, end quote, comma, text. Parentheses. And I ran it. And it started printing it out right there. It's hard to tell where it started printing it out, right? But it opened the file, and everything that was in the file, it then spit out right there, starting from my comment and going all the way down. So it actually opened our file. And it read it in to this variable so that we could do stuff with it. Stuff is kind of nebulous, right? Now, normally I don't think that we're going to read the entire file in with one command. Why do I say that? What if the file was 10 megabytes long? Would you want to store 10 megabytes of information into a single variable? No, you just want to read the part of it that you need. So like if it's 10 megabytes of data, you know, and it's made out of 10 million lines, well, you could just read in a line of data, and another line of data, and another line of data, and so on. Okay, so text files. A text file, we've been working with text files the whole time. Whenever I popped open Notepad, it created a text file. Whenever we used idle and saved it, or if you're using another Python editor, that py file is also a text file, and we can read that with these Python commands. So a text file is a software object that stores data on a permanent medium such as a disk or a CD. What's the difference between text file and the user typing stuff in? Well, the data set can be much larger. You could have a text file that's, 10 megabytes, like I said, and it would take somebody a long time to type in 10 megabytes. But we could create a file that had 10 megabytes of data really quick with a for loop. So the data can be input much more quickly and with less chance of error. If that data has already been stored and validated, then you have good data and you can read it. And so the data can be used repeatedly. Once the census has been taken and all of those things are stored in a database, you can run a report after report based on that database. So using a text editor such as Notepad or TextEdit, you can create, view, or save data in a text file. Let's do that. Let's go to idle, and let's make a new file and just call it data. So I'm going to do a file save as, and I'm going to leave the extension py so I don't have to change anything with it. But normally I'd make it .txt. I'm going to leave it py though. and I'm going to type in some numbers. 100, 200, 300. Make sure you get that final enter in, and then save it. Control S or hit File Save. And then minimize that window or something, because we don't need that anymore. That's going to be my data file, and I'm going to open it for reading. So fn equals data.py, that's the file that I'm going to open. File equals open, parentheses, fn, comma, quote r, end quote. And by the way, if you leave off the comma, quote r, it assumes you're opening it for reading anyways. So if you see people just doing that, but I like specifying the R because it reminds me that if I wanted to change it, I could make it a W if I wanted to overwrite that file. But I don't. And then text equals file.read, parentheses, in parentheses, and let's print that text out. Print, parentheses, quote, text equals, end quote, comma, text. And it should be the contents of that data file, 100, 200, 300. If I just did read line, it would get only the first line. Right? And so it says text equals 100. I could use a loop. Let's use a loop to read it out. Let's not even use this read line business. So I'm going to comment that out. I'm going to comment that print statement out. And I'm going to do this. For text in file, colon, print parentheses text. And it's not going to look totally great yet, but we're getting in the right direction. What do I mean by the right direction? Well, I have 3 pieces of data. I wanted to print out 3 lines on the screen. But it's putting blanks between them. Why is that? It's because in my original data file, there's a character turn after each one of these, right? And so when it reads it in, it's got that character turn. So I need to strip that character turn off. So here's how I do that. I'm going to say text equals text.strip. That removes the \n from the data. Or not, because I said test rather than text. All right, and there's my data, right? But those are strings, just like the user typed in. If we wanted to add those numbers up, we'd have to convert them with float. We could do that. What if we were worried that it might be a blank line? Right? What if I come over here and I add a blank line and I don't want to add up a blank line? Well, there's a blank line there and I would not want to handle it. So after my strip statement, I might want to have an if statement. If len parentheses text in parentheses equals 0 colon, it means it's a blank line. So instead I'm going to make it if len parentheses text in parentheses greater than 0, the line's got data. Not a blank line. Then print that data out. And we can convert it to a number if we wanted to. Num equals float parentheses text for whatever purposes, like if we wanted to add a series of numbers together or something like that. So instead of printing the text out, why don't we print that number out? I'm going to delete that print text number out statement, deleting that print, and I'm going to print parentheses quote number read equals end quote comma num. There, and there's our numbers that we read, 100, 200, 300. So let's add some comments. .read reads the entire file with one method call. .read line just reads one line, which is usually what you want to do. Normally you don't want to read the entire file. Or at least think about whether you want to do that or not. A for loop, like for text in file will read the file in line by line. Once you have that line, use strip to remove the carriage return. It also removes any leading tabs or whatever, so if you want those leading tabs, you have to do something a little bit different. You have to use R strip, which means strip only the right side rather than the left side. But I don't mind it removing the tabs, so I'm going to leave that there. Now what if we wanted to write those numbers out to a new file? Or we wanted to write some data out to a new file. Don't know what. As soon as you're done reading from a file, you should close it. And I did not do that up here. So underneath where I printed out my text, I'm going to do file.close. You should always close your file because if you leave it open, then the operating system may have a lock on it. And you might not be able to make a backup, of that file or copy it to, you've done that before when it says that the application still has the file open. So there we go. We've closed that file, and now we're done reading these numbers in. We also want to close this file. Whoops, except I want it back tabbed. I don't want to close the file in the middle of the loop. I want to close it here. Now let's open one more file and write some text to it. fn equals output.txt, end quote. File equals open, fn, short for file name, quote, w. We're going to write to this file. Well, let's do so. File.write this, oh come on, quote, this is a cool file, exclamation mark, \n, end parentheses. Notice I had to put the \n because unlike the print statement, the write statement does not go to the next line. I am proud of it. \n, in parentheses, and file dot write parentheses quote lecture done, in parentheses, end quote, in parentheses, and we better close our file. So file dot close. Bless you. Just a second. All right, what if I wanted to open that file that I just created, like in Notepad, just for funsies? Import OS, and let's make a string that we're going to launch in order to open that file. So our command equals parentheses Notepad, that's the name of the editor, space, end quote, plus fn. So when we're done, it'll say Notepad space output.txt. And we're going to do os.system parentheses command in parentheses. And if I've done this correctly, then it's going to write those lines out to the file and then open it up. Or not, because I forgot to close my triple quote. Don't forget to close your triple quote.
Import OS.
Yep, import OS, command equals Notepad space, end quote, plus fn, os.system command. But let me make absolutely sure that really works. It did, right? It wrote to the file, and then it made a system call to the operating system, that's what OS means, in order to edit the file with Notepad. Not the only way to edit it, right? And you can put anything you want to in that system call. You want to launch Internet Explorer and go to a specific website, you can put different commands there. Now the fact that it launched a black screen behind it is kind of annoying, and we might want to find another way of launching files, but as a quick and dirty way of seeing our output, that's kind of fun. So why don't we stop here? Let's put a comment as to what this did. For fun, we will use the operating system to launch Notepad to edit the file. We probably could have just said command equals FN and it still would have launched it. Yes, that is true because it had the TXT extension. If you're on a Mac, you don't have the TextPad application, and so that's not going to work. And you might monkey around and see if you can figure out how to get it to work. All right, let's stop here so that I can make a Dropbox and we'll be done. Then I'll bring the code back and wander around, but some people need to go.
Don't forget about the roll.
I shan't. Thank you.